dad? Okay, you know John?
I've seen that ordinance right here.
You'll know John? I worked with John when he was at the sheriff's department. He was a county deputy, and then he worked for Harrison Police.
You know how to fry chickens?
Right there. And then it
Oh,
starts
come
over
on
there.
now.
That ain't a real clone. He's imported from somewhere else. Imposter.
Like to call the June 24th, 2019 Utility Service Board to order. Roll call, please.
Board Member Tony Abbott.
Here.
Board Member Aaron Cook.
Here.
Board Member Mel Davis.
Here.
Board Member Randy Abner.
Here.
Board Member Paul Seymour Jr.
Here.
City Attorney Del Weldon.
Here.
Utility Director Olin Clausen.
Present.
President Kelly Malone is out, and myself.
Any announcements?
Yeah, I've got a couple things I'd like to address. We've had, as everybody's aware, we've had a number of customers who were affected by the phase-to-phase grounding issue or phase-to-phase fault issue with Duke Energy on the 138 kV line. This has affected anybody really in the city that has three-phase, especially, including the city itself. I had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Abbott yesterday about the pumps over at the splash park, the new splash park at Civic Park. Those motors were single-phased for a period of time during this incident, which caused those motors to basically succumb to that single-phasing incident. And so they'll most likely have to be replaced or rewound. A couple things that people need to know about this, and we've tried to communicate this with the public, is number one, this right now is being couched as a act of God incident by Duke Energy, which means nobody has any recourse or means to be made whole other than through their own homeowners or business insurance. Because they're part of the federal pathway and they are they have to be NERC compliant, they will have to, and I say they, Duke will have to submit a investigation and a report within 180 days to NERC. We have requested a copy of that filing once it's made public or once they receive it. And in there, it will identify whether this was a preventable incident, a maintenance issue, in other words, or if it was truly an act of God. If it turns out to be a maintenance type issue, there could be some culpability on Duke's part for, could be, I want to stress that, could be some culpability on Duke's part for some of the damage that was done system-wide, and it isn't just with Lawrenceburg, it's with other places as well. We have tried, I've had meetings just today with customers who've come in the office and asked about this. I've responded to a number of emails, a number of direct messages on social media, specifically about this, and we have tried to be very consistent in our responses to those customers and respond quickly and as accurately as we can based on the limited amount of information that we have available to us. Does anybody have any questions on that?
What other customers, Olin, were affected by this?
Customers in terms of
Three-phase.
communities or, so we've had individual residential customers come in who have had problems with refrigerators and AC units.
Yeah.
We've had a number of businesses that have come in. I know that we had some communication with Proximo, some with the casino, some with the schools, our own city.
Yeah.
Scott Allen at Ohio Valley Precision. Just a number of people have had issues. And then in Greendale, I'm hearing that they've got a number of customers there that had $100,000 worth of motors and contactors burn up. And so it's a major issue. A couple of things that were a little bit odd about the outage. Usually when a transmission line has a phase-to-ground incident like this, or even a phase-to-phase, especially a phase-to-phase incident like this, the relaying at the substations, the power stations, it opens and it protects the cities against these kinds of things. When it occurred for us, we obviously were calling Duke and trying to get some understanding of where the outage occurred, what was happening. We knew that we had fluctuating voltage because of some of the complaints that were coming into us and some of the phone calls that we had received. At that point, we started calling our three-phase customers and telling them to go on generator if they could or open their disconnects. And in fact, we had residential customers that we gave the same advice to open their disconnects. At that point, I got a hold of Mike Harper and in discussion with him, decided that our best option was to open our power transformers, to go to the substations and just separate ourselves from the Duke system. And so we did that. We did that in an effort to try to preserve our installed electrical devices as well as our customers.
We'd still be without power if that happened. But
Yeah, they would. Yeah, and and Duke had an issue too, from my understanding, that they couldn't just open from those switches under load, because when you try to do that with an electrical switch, your chances of burning that switch down or causing a catastrophic event are pretty significant. And so I think by opening our substations and isolating our load away from them, it had to have helped facilitate in their rerouting of energy. The substations, we were able to re-energize those around 9:45, somewhere in there. At that point, for the rest of the evening, the crews went around and regated cutouts and cutouts that were blown. Single phase and three phase takeoffs that blew, we were able to regate those. And then we had, we spent the rest of the evening going in people's homes and turning breakers back on. Because when a customer has a breaker issue at home that's unrelated to a major outage, they kind of know to go check the breakers. But when you have a major outage that the whole town's dark and then things don't come back on, it isn't intuitive to go check your breaker box, not for a lot of people. And so up until about 3:30 or 3 o'clock that morning, we were in people's homes turning breakers back on for them, which is something we typically don't do for a lot of different reasons. But in this case, it was so pervasive that we felt that was the best way we could serve the community, was to do that for them.
Has Duke offered any explanation as to why their reclosers and breaker didn't work?
No, they have not. Despite our asking, they have not given us an official response, Mel, as to why that happened. If you guys remember back on the Greendale substation, we've had several discussions about that. At one point, there was some talk about trying to relocate that substation up above the ski resort and several different things. And we had, for a period of time there, we had several outages related to that substation, and switches burning and relays not working and those kinds of things. And so if I had to guess, and it's purely a guess, I would say that the relaying at that substation is so antiquated that it just doesn't react and do the same things that you would expect for it to do if it were new. And so I think all of that will be mentioned in the report when the report's available. But I just want everybody here to know what I know. And that's what I know to date on the subject.
Okay. Any other announcements?
No, I've got one other issue that's associated with that I'll probably have Colin talk about in the committee reports piece.
Okay, all right. We need to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
So move.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Committee reports?
Colin, you want to go ahead and give the committee reports on budget items?
So we've got a few things. Hunter's going to pass it out to you guys. So.
Thank you.
So first thing, the Egan invoices with Greendale for the chlorination project. So we submitted those to Steve and Greendale. The total was $117,000, $117,886.37 in total. So we submitted those a couple weeks ago. We got our first check back last week for $38,997.61. I just talked to Steve before the meeting. We're supposed to get another check July 10th and then the last one August 14th. So all that should be cleared up to date. So
What was the first check you got?
$38,997.61.
Thank you.
And I think that if there's, it's up to this board really to decide where the beginning point was in the billing of Greendale for the chloride issues. We've talked in this committee on a couple of occasions about the total amount of money I think we've expended dealing with that. The billing that we're talking about is just from the point about this time last year, maybe a year and a half ago, where Greendale said, you know, yeah, we're the ones that caused the problems and we'll go ahead and take care of the expenses related to that. And so the costs that we are talking about now are just from that date, but don't necessarily cover the total cost that we've spent in dealing with the the chloride issues there, which I think is closer to about 700,000 or somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so we haven't had a definitive decision from this committee or this board on where we're, and I'm not advocating that we go back after the amount. I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that at some point we're going to have to put it to a vote to decide how much we're interested in being paid back by Greendale, when the beginning point is, and when it terminates.
Well, I can tell you from experience when it started was when we reactivated the wells over at the fairgrounds, which was in 2007. And that's when we had to put some interdiction wells in and start.
So I know these amounts just started in 2017. So there's 10 years that,
Yeah.
you know, were uncaptured, so. Second, we just want to get you guys up to date on a few projects we've got going on. First is the Intrapac. So I think that's getting close to being done, correct, Olin?
Yeah, they completed the work today in total. The only thing that's left now is we had a problem with our phasing sticks. And so because we have a separate feed for them, we won't commit to letting them use that till we can go back and phase it in and make sure that A, B, and C are A, B, and C on the other side of the feed. So that'll probably be, it could be this week. Potentially it's going to be next week at some point, but we're complete with the project. We completed that today.
Yep, and for price-wise, right now, this is just including outside services and materials. This doesn't include any of our labor or our materials. We're at $139,164.31 for Intrapac. And then we've got just another update on 4th and Front Street, which I think we're finished on, or if not finished, really close to being finished.
So 4th and Front, we're going to get back on that. We're probably a week and a half out from starting that project back up, and we've got maybe a week's worth of work to do to be complete with that project.
So all invoices to date, we're at $359,502.95. So, and that includes everything. So,
Got a question. We just heard that report like that was you guys' project. Is that your project?
No, we've had some discussion about this before. We were asked some time ago, and Mel, I think you were even asked when you were sitting in this seat, to remove the pole on the corner of 4th and Front so that the corner could be softened. And I think at one point the building that was there was supposed to be torn down. The building has since been sold. Mike Knoll owns the building. It's not being torn down. But still, we were asked, I was asked with my first few months here to remove that pole and reroute. I presented a budget to Mr. Clark at that point, which was about $200,000, $186,000 and change, and that didn't deal with a lot of the things that we have had to deal with after the fact. When I was first proposed to the project, I didn't anticipate that we would have to facilitate the conduits and the piping and the reroute for the telephone companies and the cable companies that were there as well. I thought, well, this isn't our project. We're being asked to do this as part of a project. So my only responsibility is just what belongs to LMU. Well, this project, it became very apparent midway through it that nobody really knew what was happening with it in terms of Comcast or CenturyLink or anybody else. We were up there doing locates one day with our contractor, and the engineer for CenturyLink happened to be there and came over and asked us what we were doing. We told him that we were getting ready to reroute all of our overhead. We were abandoning the poles on the corner of 4th and Front, and that came as quite a shock to him. He didn't know anything about that. And he started lamenting the fact that he was going to have extensive costs associated with that, and who was going to pay for this, and why didn't we communicated with him. And so I sent a few emails and had a few conversations with Mr. Clark, just saying, hey, this isn't my project. We're just trying to help facilitate a project, and there probably needs to be a meeting amongst the stakeholders to talk about timelines and the concerns and considerations that each of these stakeholders have so that we can complete the project. To date, we've not had any of those meetings. And so where we're at after we complete our piece, I don't know. My fear is we'll complete our work, and the 2 poles that are on the corner of 4th and Front will remain there for a period of months and maybe even a year or longer, just knowing how the cable company and communication companies work. And it's unfortunate because this was a large expense. I'm sure by the time we're done, we're at how much right now?
Right now, $359,502.95.
So we'll be well into 400,000 plus by the time we're complete with our end of the project. That doesn't count the other expenses that will have to come along with the project. So I just felt like there wasn't a lot of communication on this. We've done everything we've been asked to do. There were some things that kind of developed that were unknown to me. And obviously this is a project where the city has to reimburse the utilities for it because we were being asked to leave a right-of-way that we had. There wasn't any benefit to us. It wasn't the ratepayers' responsibility or problem that we were there. This was a project that was supposed to soften a corner, so we're trying to expedite as quickly as we can. We've done most of the engineering in-house on it to try to save costs on it, but it's been an expensive project, and we're hoping to wrap it up soon.
When you wrap your end of it up, is that pole, looks like to me about all that pole's got holding it up in the air is the wires that are hanging on it, because it's smashed completely close together. When you're done, will that pole be gone?
Which pole are you talking about,
The
Paul?
one on the corner.
The steel pole? The
Yeah,
steel-
I mean, in a perfect world, yes, that pole and the wooden pole both will be completely
But
gone.
are those two the poles that you say that might be there for another?
Well, I ask you, the metal pole, the wood pole that's there now was put in place to replace the metal pole that's been smashed. And the metal pole, and that's been as long as I've been here. And the metal
is
pole
cut
still
off,
has
yeah.
all kinds of communications and stuff on it. They didn't even bother to come move that stuff to the wooden pole that was supposed to replace the metal pole. And so I have very little faith in the telecom companies to come in a timely fashion, do those things. I just don't.
Dale, can we ask for the next council meeting, can we get an update from Mike on the project?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, he might know something.
Yes, sir.
I do think, and Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the pole attachment agreement that we negotiated with CenturyLink should help facilitate some of this.
It should help with CenturyLink. It won't help necessarily with Comcast, which is, off the top of my head, I think has a slower response time. We'll have to dig into it. It's just the nature that the two agreements are different. One's older, Comcast one is obviously older than the newer CenturyLink agreement. But we'll send out whatever notices we need to send out. Give them the time that's required under the contract to get off the LMU pole.
Should we Should we look at this a little farther, because that's kind of like a safety issue there. Somebody could, would it fall? Could it possibly come down?
Well, no, and I wouldn't do anything in terms of removing our plant, our outside plant, that would cause a dangerous situation.
Okay.
But it's definitely a cost to the city. It definitely, I mean, it's cost us on several fronts with our make-ready for the fiber and different things. It's cost us money. I mean, it's just been a problem from the beginning. And then it's an eyesore. You know, the community goes around, we have all these nice, big, poles that replace the old and antiquated stuff, yet we still have an old pole sitting there with wires attached to it because the telecom company won't move and get off that pole to the new.
Get a lot of poles like that.
Yeah, and we shouldn't, quite frankly.
Right.
This is the second project that I know of that we've done, and we've had utility issues. If we do any type of road project, or if a utility does any type of utility project, I don't, I guess what I would like to know is whose project was it? We need to come up with some type of, standard procedure, Dale, that just, we get all these guys together, because Cribble Road was a mess. This is obviously, doesn't sound good. Mike might be able to give us a good report, but I definitely, we need people communicating on things like this.
I had a question on hardwood, and I asked you about it at the last meeting, that took all the curb out. Before that, we come in and bored your fiber line down through there, your conduit. Now, a foot more, they could have put their, while they took the curbs out, they could have put the fiber line in there without having to pay the expense of the guy to come in and bore that. So
Now,
that would have been something that they could work together with Mike to make it work.
Agreed, and we have learned from some of those things, and in fact, on the rest of hardwood, we're gonna get in and do the laterals across the street.
Right.
And then they've got a paving project that's scheduled.
Actually,
So we'll be
yeah.
ahead of them.
Agree with that.
So it will facilitate
Okay,
that kind
but
of
I just-
cooperation that you're talking
It'd be
about.
nice if you worked together.
Agreed, I agree.
Okay, so now we'll move on to what I handed you guys, which is the rodeo detail and the rodeo budget. I'll start with the rodeo detail, and that's through today. So over on the top left, we have our revenues. Our first category is sponsorships. So to date, we're at $103,000, and you can see the detail of what we've gotten from who so far. So our sponsorships are 93% of our revenue so far. Below that, we have booth rentals, and those are for vendors if they want to come and rent a spot. So we're at $1,436.70, and that's 1% of our revenue. Below that, we have our entry fees, and these are journeyman and apprentice entry fees. So we're at $9,026.65 for 8% of our revenue. Then we have merchandise sales of $30.87, and we don't have any ticket sales yet. So we've got total revenues so far, $113,000, $494.22. So, and then over on the right side, we have our expenses so far. I know it might have been last meeting or the meeting before, we talked about an impact sports bill. So we went and pulled that up, and we have copies of it, of the bill, if anybody wants to see it. So those were actually misclassified. They were actually expenses for the Colorado Springs Rodeo and some electric promotional items. So shirts and patches for the electric linemen. So expenses right now, we've just got 2 Shopify fees, which is where we house our website to sell rodeo tickets and sponsorships and everything on there. So we're at $158 so far. So we expect the expenses to start rolling in soon. We're getting close to the rodeo. But does anybody have any questions on that?
I talked a little bit about our budgeted numbers thus far.
Yeah. So the next sheet I gave you guys was the budget. So Olin and I got together and kind of put together our best estimate of the budget that we expect. So we've got the mutual aid bull riding event, $55,800. The Fall Fest Jumbotron, $2,500. Owen Washburn for $10,000. We've got apparel for $10,000. The trophies for $10,000 and $1,000 for the welcome reception. So our plan is to bring this report every month and keep you guys updated on where we are, actual to budget. So does anybody have any questions?
Who's this Owen Washburn?
Olin, you could,
Owen Washburn is the promoter that takes care of all the bull riding stuff for us.
We're not using Dale Brigsby again?
Dale Brisby wasn't related to the rodeo. He was doing sponsorship stuff and promotional stuff for Whiskey City Fiber and Data.
Isn't his company called Rodeo Time Production?
He does a lot more than just rodeos. He did promotion for us for the Whiskey City Fiber and Data. All the work that he's done has been an effort to do commercials and 15-minute, 30-second pieces for Whiskey City Fiber and Data.
But that's the name of his company, right? Rodeo Time Productions.
So I guess all you can do is rodeos if your name's Rodeo Time Production.
I'll just ask you a question.
I'm answering it.
Is it yes, is your answer?
Ask the question again.
Is Dale Brisby, who we paid $100,000 to, is the name of his company Rodeo Time Productions?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Olin, this Jumbotron, is that for the Jumbotron that we use by the stage, or is that over where you're at?
No, it's the one that you use at the stage.
Can I mark that on my spreadsheet?
You can, yes. One of the things that the committee asked that we do is take the money that we're raising from outside sources to help facilitate the rodeo. And so I want to go back and just draw attention that we've raised $113,000 that isn't the ratepayers' money or anything like that. This is money we've raised in sponsorships and money that was given to us by the city. And to date, so we're ahead of what our expenses are anticipated to be. So.
I got a question.
Yep.
Tickets,
yes.
are we gonna rethink your ticket?
We are.
Can you tell me what direction you
So
might be headed?
last year we charged $20 a ticket. This year we're going to charge $10 a ticket, and everybody under 8 is in free. They get in for free.
How about seniors?
We charge them 20. 25. We charge them 25.
So if you guys don't have any questions, I think that's it. So.
I would like to call Shelley up to the stand now, since we're talking about rodeo things, talk a little bit about what we're doing with the hotel.
Sure. You're selling out our hotels. Thank you very much. As of right now, the status at Doubletree is your block is pretty much full, which is a great thing. And now we're ready to start filling up the casino block. And we have a little wiggle room there. We can always add a few more, but the rodeo from our perspective, and I'm a new Dearborn County CVB board member as well, and this event is for the hotel. It's in our top 5. GTO might be pushing you out a little bit right now, but their spend remains to be seen yet. We'll see how they do. But, you know, it's a great event for the tourism of this area and bringing everyone in. And, you know, obviously it's a great event for our hotel, for our hotels, for the casino spend. You know, never can tell what they're spending over there, but they know that the coin in is going up. And I don't know all the Hollywood terms or anything, but we thank you very much.
Thanks, Shelley.
Do you also think the surrounding community, as far as our businesses, do you think that was affected too?
Absolutely. And I know from what we've seen, even in, you know, at the levee and things, all the bars are packed. You know, the restaurants are packed. With the city park, I can just imagine that that's just going to enhance everything. Absolutely. It is. I mean, in tourism, you want to bring these groups in and showcase what you have to offer, because the people that are coming in with the rodeos may work with other companies or have other things. And so it's like this ancillary thing. You know, you bring them in for something like that, you're showcasing your area, and, you know, that's what our job is to make sure everyone knows Lawrenceburg. You know, it's more than a suburb of Cincinnati type of thing. And that's one of the tourism, you know, the CVB's job is to get Lawrenceburg out there so that we want to bring these big groups in, because everyone benefits, your shopkeepers, You know, of course, the casino, the hotels, but it's beyond that. It's the other hotels too. You know, the little ones benefit too from just families and stuff coming in beyond the riders and things that we house.
So our anticipation, when Crystal and I were going through all of our numbers today, and we're gonna go through your manifest and ours next
Yes,
couple days.
we are.
I think we're gonna have many, many more teams that are gonna have to book and go into the overflow if the names on the manifest are correct in what we've done now, because right now it looks like we've basically taken the entire hotel.
Yep, there's a handful of rooms. Well, of course, IMEA, who's the sponsor, they've got their conference leading up to the rodeo, so they've got a handful of rooms of their folks that'll be here all week. We have a small little wedding at the hotel too. Which the thing with the rodeo, you know, you're taking our guest rooms. We still have our space there to sell. So, and that's great. You know, we can do a wedding or something like that. Hopefully it's cowboy themed, but they'll fit right in.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is all germane to the conversation. You know, I don't think anybody would say that it's inaccurate to say that we've taken a few lumps over the rodeo from last year. And it's been a little bit confusing to me because we've brought in literally tens of thousands of dollars from outside companies. And we've done $250,000 worth of business with the hotel here, business that we're supposed to be supporting. And we've brought in literally dozens and dozens of people. And right now I think the count's about 70 journeyman linemen and about 30 apprentices from outside the city coming here. They bring families with them. And they spend a lot of money while they're here. And I hope that we've put a lot of those sharp criticisms behind us. We're going to do our part in terms of providing you guys with budget numbers and things so you can see those things and be able to answer the questions when they're asked of you. But I personally think that this rodeo is probably one of the most additive events that we're fortunate to have here in the city of Lawrenceburg. I know that from other people, talking with them, we got people coming from British Columbia, we got people coming from California. We have 8 teams that booked from Ameren, Illinois, that I don't even know these people. They booked this rodeo because they've been told by many people who were here and participated that it is one of the most premier events that you can go to as a journeyman lineman.
Yeah, I know there's some of those people.
And I think that speaks volumes, not just about me and my staff, but about the community, about Fall Fest. One of the things they loved best was being able to be here and participate with Fall Fest. Is that not accurate? They were absolutely blown away by the community. We talked about moving the event to different dates, and we had a lot of pushback. People thought, man, if you move it away from Fall Fest weekend, that would be a travesty in our opinion, because we bring our families here and our kids can be down at the carnival and the kids can do those other kinds of things, and we can participate in the concerts that night. And they were just absolutely blown away with the quality and the hospitality that Lawrenceburg showed them.
Shelley, I have a question.
Sure.
Does this affect your restaurant facility also?
It does.
Positively?
Positively.
Okay.
I can tell you, you know, as I've done events for 30 years, and anytime you do one the first year, it is a risk.
Yeah.
You don't know how, you don't know, you're hoping really to break even and then get the word out and grow from there. You know, I don't know if you guys made money, I don't know if you lost money or whatever, but it really, honestly, takes about 5 years to get it up and going. So if you're going really well now, and I think, looking back at last year with the Fall Fest and the rodeo at the same time, I agree with Olin. I just thought it was a really quality showing for this whole area as far as tourism, the whole picture. It really kind of gave them stuff to do during the day with the rodeo. Then they could come over with the concerts and stuff. And for people that aren't from here, and I know Fall Fest probably has whatever issues. I'm a Northern Kentucky girl, so I don't, but to put a free concert on, that was kind of blowing people away, because most communities don't do that. And I don't know if you're going to continue to do that or not, but it was a real added value for the people that were here.
Yeah, and to that point, the Ameren, Illinois people, They went to a rodeo up in Cleveland. Cleveland, was it Crystal? Somewhere in Ohio, up north. And their entry fees to get in the rodeo were like $65 a team. Our entry fees are $500. And they spent several $1,000s with us to come here, and her reason for doing that was because, well, it's only $65 to go to that rodeo, but it's not like your rodeo. It's not your rodeo's the rodeo. And so we've got a great event, and I hope that we can continue to receive support from the council, from Utility Service Board on it, and we'll continue to put our best foot forward and represent the community in the best way we possibly can. And we won't do fireworks at 9 in the morning.
Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
New business, unless there are any other committee reports.
No, Your Honor. Well, I do have one other thing that I would like to talk with the Utility Service Board about. In lieu of and Colin, this is the part that you could talk with your Conversation State Board of Accounts. In lieu of the three-phase incidents that we had with the different businesses over this outage with Duke, one of the things that I asked Colin to check with State Board of Accounts on was whether we could offer as a service to the customers, the three-phase customers, the engineering, sizing, and installation of three-phase protection devices at their business. And if we could do that and then finance that, basically that cost through the utility and charge them as part of their monthly bill, their monthly charge, over a period of 5 years or something like this. Colin?
So I spoke with Todd Caldwell this morning, and he essentially told us that it's a Utility Service Board issue, that there's not any statute that would, there's no requirement or issue with doing that. So we just need to get together and decide amounts, payment terms, interest, all the details. So it's up to us, to decide, and then whatever we decide, we just have to run with it that way and keep track of it. And there's, and it's essentially, he just said it's up to us. So we just wanted to make sure that we weren't stepping on any toes or we weren't doing anything out of line. So, so we, over the next few weeks, we need to get together and decide how we want to move forward.
And I think one of the first steps would be to talk with some of our key accounts, some of the bigger three-phase customers, and even some of the city installations, and see what their interests are in doing something like that. And if there's enough of an interest, we could do some pretty high-level numbers to determine what our cost would be out of pocket to do those type of installs, those type of phase monitoring and three-phase protection, and get some idea of what the repayment terms would be, length of time that we would be looking at, and then float that past those same customers to see if it's something that they would be interested in.
Well, I'm going to make a suggestion, if I could. When the facilities either have to buy new motors or rewind, I understand rewind is totally different from new, that we recommend that they buy more energy efficient motors. And I don't know if IMPA still runs that program, but they used to run a program.
They run certain programs, change throughout the past years on what they cover and what they don't.
Yeah.
It has changed a little. I think right now, they moved away from like the LED lighting and those kinds of things. More things with like.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. But, recommend that they do that. Can't make them do it, but we can recommend.
Well, I guess we could if we're offering financing for.
Well, yeah, if you're offering financing.
Protection or phase monitoring.
Now, did it affect the sewer plant also?
It did. Yeah, there was a number of contractors burned up at the sewer plant. LCD had some. I think that if you were a three-phase customer in Lawrenceburg, you experienced some loss.
You were affected in some manner. Okay.
Yeah. I've heard numbers from approximately $50,000, somewhere in there, motors. 10,000 at the casino. So far, 10,000 at the casino. Yeah, you know, you take a company like Anchor Glass, for example. You know, there's no telling. I heard they had 20 motors burn up there, and I don't know if that's true, but this is what I'm being told by some of the staff at Greendale, and that's got to be hugely expensive.
Okay.
But I think our idea is to get it to where we can put it on their utility bill. We obviously still have to work through the details, but that's where we're at. We just wanted to provide you guys a little update on that situation.
Thanks, Colin. Any other committee reports?
No, Your Honor.
New business, Olin Clausen, Cindy Fort, sewer/grease ordinance.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Greg Nyerbarger, our attorney. Cindy was going to be here tonight. I don't know where she is. I know there's some traffic out on the interstate. Greg got caught up in a little bit, so maybe that's kept her.
I sat in that for an hour. It was an accident going to one of the construction zones, and they closed it down, so they're rerouting everybody around. Well, welcome to the highly exciting segment of fats, oils, and greases. It's about as exciting as it does get. Just know that commercial users that send a lot of grease and fats and things down your system clog it up, and it costs a lot of money and a lot of time and energy to clean that up. It's gooey, it's messy. You've all dealt with grease in your kitchen at home. You know, imagine that 100-fold going into one manhole with lots of different businesses at the same time. You'll also hear from Andy Lyons, not tonight, but whenever you want to talk to him, he'll give you all the horror stories that he's seen as of late. You have a lot of businesses that have under sink, small grease traps. Those require very intense and constant maintenance, and they don't really do a good job. I think Andy will tell you he's seen the result of that in lots of different areas on the system. So we put together, in connection with Cindy, an ordinance to try and address those problems so that you don't have clogs and stoppages and backups. And that's when you really get into problems, right? When your system doesn't work. So what this proposes, and I want to make sure that we're clear because I know the packet may be a little bit confusing, but the first thing you should have is, because I know they're stapled together, so it doesn't really matter, but the first thing you have is a proposed resolution recommending to the Common Council the establishment of an ordinance governing the introduction of the fats, oils, and grease into the city sanitary sewer system. Okay, that's page, kind of first 2 pages for your all signature. You review it. We're not happy to talk about the meat of the language in a minute, but you have that first, and then Exhibit A to that, when it's signed, will be, which is probably at the end of your packet. It is just the proposed ordinance without the introductory language and all the things that says ordinance at the top. Okay, so that's what you would sign tonight. It just begins with the .085 grease, oil, and sand interceptors. You'll see that page without all the introductory language on. It's probably at the back of your packet. That is what would be attached to your resolution if you decide to pass it tonight. And then also in the packet is a proposed ordinance that you would be recommending up to the Common Council for its consideration. Okay? That's what you have in your packet. Now the grease traps and the interceptors are important. We're recommending, in talking with Cindy, you know, the engineering person who's looked at a lot of this, and Andy Lyons, who, trust me, has been down into this, a minimum of 1,000 and then up to 2,000 gallons. That's what you want to have. And then if you have a commercial dishwasher, you'd want to have a 1,500 gallon system. Cindy feels that would, and Andy does too, would handle the problems that they're currently experiencing and seeing in certain restaurants around the city. And I'm happy to talk about any of the details of the ordinance if you want. Under the proposal that you have now, you folks, as the Utility Service Board, serve as the appellate arm. So the process would be people go out, they get a notice of violation, and then they could then appeal that violation to you folks. So they now have a direct line to you. If they get a notice of violation, they can come in and talk about it with you. And you guys can talk about with them whether they've met the requirements.
Can we just take a brief recess? Mr. Davis is stepping out for
Sure.
a second. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Thanks, Greg. He's on He's got granddaughter duty, so that trumps all of it.
I mean, I got it, I guess I just let them know, I think it may try it in October.
No, because we don't try to tell people in their groups how to design.
Good.
You know what I mean?
So we're back on the record. Mr. Davis is returned. Thanks, Mr. Nyberger.
Sure.
Right. Right.
So,
Excuse me, Greg, I had to make sure my granddaughter got in her mother's car.
no worries, I understand. If you guys have any questions about the ordinance itself, I'm happy to talk about it. There are lots of problems that if you want to talk about what has been experienced, you really should have Andy Lyons here, and he can tell you, and he can tell you everything that it takes to go out there and clean up the system, or a dirty manhole and a clogged manhole. It's really an unneeded expense, to be frank with you. You really shouldn't have to be doing it as often as you are now, especially at the level and severity at which you're dealing with it. And this is one way of getting rid of that problem.
And in this new ordinance, it says, we can be reimbursed for the time and materials, doesn't it? I believe it does, if we have to clean it.
Oh, yeah, yes,
Yes,
and
okay.
yeah, it gives you, plus any civil penalties that generally associated under your ordinances for a violation, yes.
And that's pretty common. One of the things, I can give you an example of that. We have a customer who, about I'd say a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I got called over to look at a manhole that was completely full to the top with grease. I mean, it was just completely jam-packed with grease. And it took Andy and the guys, all week to clean that mess up. And we knew the person who had caused the issue. They had an under-sink grease oil separator. And they had been demonstrating that they had been in compliance with their grease oil, their grease oil separator. I don't believe that they were. I believe that when the inspector comes around, he comes around in a routine kind of every Thursday kind of a thing, and it's easy to clean it up before he gets there. But that doesn't mean that it's being cleaned up all the time on a daily basis like those under-counter sink units should. Before Platinum Fitness came in, they did their own inspection of all of the sewer services related to the building that they would be in. And again, that same manhole, we found that it was as bad as it was a year prior. And so a third party came in and cleaned it that time. And an issue developed, and Greg, if you want to try to talk about this in a way that we can, the long and short of it is, those kinds of things have the ability to prevent people from coming in and investing in your community and putting their business in, because the reality of the situation is, if those things aren't maintained and those things aren't cleaned, their property's now at risk. It could cause backups into their building, backups into their property, any number of issues. And so those are things we have to be cognizant of. And not only that, it causes us, whether we realize it or not, it causes us additional money when it goes to the sewer treatment plant, because those grease oils and fats have to be dealt with there. And so it raises our costs in doing business with South Dearborn Regional Sewer District.
Yeah, I can explain a couple instances when I was utility director. One facility had a grease oil separator, a large one, but along with that is proper maintenance. Well, 4 manholes downstream was completely full and caused a problem with 2 more businesses. One of them happened to be a grocery store. So it is very important. Another situation, there was a restaurant facility that had an under-counter grease oil separator. And when I walked in there after a call, in the kitchen, there was probably 6 to 8 inches of water that the cooks were standing in and preparing food in. So it, not only does it cause problems for your neighbors, it can cause other issues also.
I got a couple of questions. Can somebody explain to me why we don't have a design that we would like?
Well, I think that by putting in the requirements that we list, you ought to,
Grease traps are pretty simple.
they're pretty simple. There are several providers for it. As long as you just have your minimum requirements, which we think this sets forth, that ought
Well,
to take care of.
but here's the problem we have in this town. Nobody knows what a grease trap is. We've got a building, the Edinburgh facility. They think they got a grease trap over there. It has no baffles in it, has no T's in it. All it does is it's a tank, and your water drops in it, and when it gets so full, your water runs out of it. A grease trap works in a certain way. I actually would, we need every town I ever been in told us what kind of grease trap that we were putting in, and I've put in hundreds of them.
Well, and typically I would agree with what you're saying. The problem is, I'll give you Pizza Hut, for example. Pizza Hut has had some plans on the books for quite some time now to upgrade all their facilities, including the grease trap. Well, they've got a relatively small building. And so a typical 1,000-gallon grease trap, and we're asking them to put in a 1,500 because they have a dishwasher. Typical 1,500-gallon grease trap doesn't fit in their space. And so they're having to go to an engineer to tell them how to make the 1,500 gallons fit, what it has to look like. And so it's a completely different thing than just a standard out of the box, or what I would consider a standard 1,000-gallon or 1,500-gallon grease trap. I think we can address what our expectations are in drawings and designs, what we recommend outside of the ordinance. I think when people come in, what's imperative is when they come in to get a business license and they find out that, oh, I gotta put in a grease trap, or my business needs a grease trap, that they actually come and talk with us, and at that point, we can sit down and show them who our preferred vendors are, what one looks like, how it needs to be installed, all these different kinds of things, so that they know that they can do that. It'd be similar to when they come in on electrical service. I don't ever spell out all the different things on electrical service on three-phase, but when they come in and say, this is what we'd like to do, how do we accomplish this, I work through that process with them, because no two installations are the same.
In this ordinance, in this, what we're doing here, before these people get a permit, will they have to present you with a set of drawings describing their grease trap? Or will you be looking at it after the fact?
On all of the new construction and remodels who are done by reputable contracting companies, the drawings that I get from them show those things in total, in detail. And I review those things, and sometimes we have a small issue with where the water's at, or on one occasion we had an issue with the fact that we caught where the sanitary sewer in the washroom went to the grease oil separator, and so we caught that and made a change to it. But they present us with plans. The problem that I get into here, and I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody, is that when people decide to open a business, what are blueprints? What are plans? I don't know what those are. I just want to open a business.
Can I suggest, not to interrupt, but can I suggest that maybe we get together between our office, Mike Clark, and yourself, to come up with a business license packet? Because they get the business license through us, and then Mike won't proceed until they get the license from us. But all ours is a background check, basically, and
Yeah.
basic information.
I think when someone comes in to open a business, I don't think that it's too much to ask that even if they draw the one line themselves, that they present us at least with a drawing so that we can understand what it is they're wanting to do. Because the only times we've ever gotten in trouble is where people don't give that to us. They just say, hey, no, we're not making any changes, we're not doing anything, and then come to find out they did make changes, they did do things. And I didn't have any way to help them in the process, because number one, they weren't exactly upfront with us on it. And number two, they never had a drawing or anything that they ever presented us. And I know Carl and I have had many conversations about this and how to try to deal with it.
You run into a lot of problems when you want to require a specific subset of traps up front. And if you find out that you're running into that type of problem when people are installing new ones, then you can address that problem by putting in a design and saying, or a particular type in any location based on volume. What you run into is you're constantly updating your ordinance, and then you're constantly trying to take your ordinance to address special situations like a Pizza Hut or something else. And unless you're telling me, I always think standard practice is somebody's going to ask, I saw the minimum requirements. I know I'm going to have to come and show you this thing, right? Before I do it, I'm going to call and ask, what do you recommend? You know, I know you're going to inspect my grease trap. Good business would say, hey, I'm just going to call up the utility department, call up the building department, say, what do you guys recommend we use? You know, what are the ones that you guys are permitting now? What are the ones that you guys are accepting now? And you tell them who they are and what they are.
I'm all right with the ordinance. I think we've needed it for years. It costs the sewer district money also. You know, it's so I would like to move forward with it. If we're looking for a motion.
We are.
Before we do that, I think Mr. Fryman.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is that over the last 4 or 5 years, we've probably added 2 or 3 days to 5 days more onto the time it takes to approve a permit. I don't know, I'm human, I may have missed, but I doubt that I've missed, given Olin and his men the electrical, the sanitation, and all the plumbing diagrams. I lay them on him now, which takes a little bit of my time away, which I'm more than glad to give them to him. But I don't know that we've approved one, so the grease trap, if it's not on the prints, have come back under new construction. One's required, and at that time, the type, and then Andy has to go the approved location. It takes a few more days, I mean, on remodels and stuff like that. But I don't know in the last 4 or 5 years if somebody has told us what they're doing, that one has ever slipped by us. I mean, that's electrical calculations and plumbing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the only time we've ever run into trouble is if somebody just omits certain facts about what they're doing, or intentionally tries to sneak something past us. And other than that, the only suggestion that I would like to make, and I've made this before, is from the time that someone comes in and submits their plans for review, I wish that we had a plan room where those plans could reside, where I could call Andy and Mike and say, okay, we got plans for a new business XYZ. They're in the plan room. I've gone down and I've reviewed them, and there's a sheet next to that, and I've signed off and made my comments on that. And I need you guys to come do the same thing. Andy comes in, reviews the plans, signs off that he's reviewed it, has no comments, or he says, I've marked them up, here are my changes. Mike Harper does the same thing. So could every other person in the city who has some purview over that. Mike Clark could come in and say, well, the curb's not correct, or the drainage isn't correct, or whatever. He could mark them up. Because what happens now is I'll come in my office and there'll be a set of plans on my desk. I'll have to track down where they came from, or someone tells me they're there. And then I review them, then I gotta give them to Andy, and Andy reviews them. And just like today, I called Andy and said, Andy, where's those plans that I gave you last week? Had Crystal given to him last week. I said, I need those back so Mike can review them, so we can get them back to the contractor so he knows the changes that need to be made. It'd be much simpler if we said, okay, the plans are in the room. If your name isn't on the sheet in 10 days, we're assuming you accepted them the way they are, or whatever the time period is. But basically, you could put everybody on notice that's in the city. You got 10 days to come in and review these plans so we can get them back to the contractor. And I just think that a plan room would expedite a lot of the things that we deal with here in terms of delays. And additional cost to people who want to come do business with us. And I just think that it would also solve the problem of where one hand doesn't know what the other's doing. Because whether it's a in-house city project, like we discussed earlier with the poles, or whether it's a customer that's coming in and do some work on 50, if we had those things in there for people to review, the only person you can blame if you don't go in and look at them and make your comments or sign off on them is yourself. I think it would facilitate things and expedite the work.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the resolution number, what?
What would the resolution number be, do you know?
That's what we're trying to find out here.
2019 something?
Have you had any more resolutions and utilities?
I don't think so. I think it'd be the first one.
So this would be for 1/2019.
All right.
Number 1, 2019. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passed.
Thank you.
And before y'all leave, if you would sign that, please.
And Greg, stay where you're at. The next couple are.
I'm going to request a 5-minute recess.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do that.
Which one do we want to sign?
That's all then. Yeah, I don't have to do anything.
So I sent the email to them.
Hey, are you reading this? Is he wanting money?
How many watts you sell for Tony?
Yeah, so here's what it should, so here's the, attached to this, so behind this page should just be,
You gotta wait to the pool. You gotta go down to the pool and do that shit instead of doing it here.
where it says this. Now you have one in the packet that says the ordinance.
Oh.
That should just be separated. So it's just the one that begins at 52.085 is attached to this.
What do they need to sign?
And they will sign the second page of this.
Okay. So just want me to take mine and pass it down?
Yep. Let me see yours.
Hey, Carl, we'll do that one next. Lee always brings it and gives it to me so I can give it to my son to collect coins. Yeah.
What's up?
I have a question for you. Okay. Yeah. I'd be glad to do it.
Tony, watch your step.
Well, you don't wanna talk about this one? He's not gonna be here tonight. He called me from the agenda. Well, no, but I wanna, the HVAC, we just need approval to move forward in the appointment of the trustee. So we can get Paul appointed to the South Dearborn Regional Sewer District Board as a trustee.
We had a truck.
We're not gonna talk about that one. We're gonna talk about this one though.
Front Street. I had a truck.
Well, I'm gonna just suggest that it be moved, but I'm gonna make a recommendation that council, because he's trying to come from council, the council just kick it right back here.
we'll keep it in our.
Get this clamp bumper. Semis when they load it. The clamp would not come with the clamp. But it just
Even when the
got locked
even-
on there. We had to call the contractor that day. I was there for 18 hours.
Oh my gosh.
I told him, I said, you can unhook your tractor. No, I have my load here. He was stuck on there for 18 hours.
Did he miss like another job?
Throw that out to where you
Getting paid tomorrow, yeah, sure.
You could, I'd ask, take this, that's it.
Load the bulbs out. Didn't work.
Horrible.
I've never seen that. Very interesting.
Yeah, it does, it does. It has it in there, basically. Hey, Carl, to answer your question, yes. Yeah.
You hear that? If I say that, we had, I went in that night on shit.
Yeah.
We had a semi over there, you know how they got the couplers that hook onto the bumper. Got one tied up in there. I put the power cut back on, he would not let the truck go. He was stuck there. We had to bring a contractor in to unhook that thing to get that out. I wanted to get a come along and pry it out. I said, nah, that's too expensive piece of equipment. I'm gonna leave it alone. He can unhook his tractor and take off to the truck stop. The trailer was staying with us. He didn't understand. Not yet. Stuff a tank we bring.
Text him.
Huh? Yeah.
Text
You
him.
build enough restaurants anymore, you ought to know.
Hope he didn't get hungry and go down to the restaurant.
I'm kinda leaning on your assistance on it, Paul, 'cause you build enough restaurants around the country.
I just put come back.
Okay.
That's one thing in all the cities, hell, I've had to put in 2 or 3.
You think it's cold in here?
Have you-
Yeah, and usually it's hot.
Let's see, we,
Believe it or not.
Oh, you're real cold.
Park in
Yeah.
Manchester,
No,
where
Mike.
that restaurant,
Yeah.
they made us put in 3.
Start wearing gloves.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Council meetings are usually burning up.
Our restaurants and they.
Well, there's a lot of hot
We're
air
just
in
around
council.
there to that little concession stand.
I always play
And I'm
Mario.
talking 1,000-gallon.
Yeah, it's Mario Clark.
Yeah, I think
Serious. And the last one was.
they think if they like burn us out, we'll.
It takes like 5 minutes to sing. Hit check. It needs to be.
Did you guys have flooding issues with all the rain?
yes,
Crystal?
some,
Secretary, right? She's secretary, right?
Flood.
Can I get your signature?
Did you have a,
You call it a high water event, not a flood.
I was just talking about local streets, yeah, I don't wanna get into the technicality. High water event.
You guys,
Yeah,
you
our
guys was
flooding
over
issues
to
when
the
the river
Jersey
goes
building
down.
with the generator.
River
running
goes
the other
down,
day. I said,
Water
"Look,
comes
here are
up."
the lights over there."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
You know, Tony, when I first moved here, I
They go
thought
bump in the
it
dark.
worked when they said that.
Everybody thinks you're nuts when you tell them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually have that chair. Can you hear me now?
Well,
Booty was over there and I pulled in. I thought, do I want
Yeah,
to
look for
work or
him.
not? Power just come on.
I don't know where he went.
Call in sick.
I texted him, come back.
You already did?
Yeah.
Okay.
answer?
No,
Yeah, that was a
Oh,
problem that
wait,
they
what do
never
you
had to deal with.
no.
And today we had somebody over that
Let him out front just to. No, that's the guy in yellow shirt.
Colin, do you mind seeing if Dell's outside?
I'll check the back hall real quick.
Okay.
I seen his phone was here.
thought he walked out front.
But I think he went around that.
Tell him you're gonna adjust his bill for tonight.
His 5 minutes is over.
Find him? Maybe thought we were done.
He left his stuff. He left his stuff.
Oh, well, never mind.
You have to have one with hair and one without. Well, we need the one without.
No, we haven't.
Huh?
No, we haven't.
Yeah. Okay. Call this meeting back to order, please. Noted that Mr. Weldon's still on leave.
Well, we're just gonna continue on the agenda?
Pardon me?
We're just gonna continue on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. I do have one announcement that I failed to mention.
Okay.
We had a journeyman lineman who resigned. He did that, middle of last week.
Who was that?
Owen Wellborn from Richmond. Tuesday was his last day. He came in and, said that he was leaving, and asked about 2 weeks' notice, and quite frankly, I just said, well, we collected the stuff that we'd given him, the hand tools, his climbing belt, his hooks, things like that. Collected all that from him, his gate card, his keys, and wished him luck in his newest endeavor. So, his reasons for leaving, as he stated, were more money closer to home, and so, anyway,
Okay.
I forgot to mention that.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Grand Buffet grease issue, or did you already cover that?
No, Your Honor, I'd like to table that.
Okay.
I guess we need a motion to table.
So move.
Second.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Tabled. Next item is the appointment of a trustee to South Dearborn Regional Sewer District.
Yeah, this issue, we've got a number of positions on the South Dearborn Regional Sewer District Board. I am one of those positions. Mr. Abbott is also one of those individuals who can serve in that capacity. I think what we're looking for is the ability to have someone else appointed to that position as well as a trustee for Lawrenceburg on the South Dearborn Regional Sewer District Board. I've asked Andy Bondistel to please tell me what the steps are in order to have these individuals able to vote. I don't quite understand how it all works, but I do know that we need another trustee appointed to the South Dearborn Board. I know that Paul's expressed some interest in doing that as well. If anybody else would like to, it's great times, a lot of fun.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve Paul, or
Move to appoint Mr. Seymour to the South Regional Sewer District Board. Is there a second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So that brings our number of, or the individuals that are trustees currently on the board are Andy Lyons, Mr. Abbott, Mr. Seymour, and then Brian Messmore is currently serving in the mayor's position. The way that works, if one of us isn't able to be at the meeting, a proxy is given to that person. They can go to the meeting and have some legal authority to conduct business on behalf of the city in case others are not there. That's happened on a couple of occasions. I've given my proxy to Andy on a couple of occasions to vote. We're just trying to clean some of that up. So when I get the language from Mr. Bondistel, I'll probably need another signature from you, Tony, and then another one, or a signature from you.
HVA system at the water plant?
Yeah, we've got, Andy he's kept this thing alive now for a better part of a year. Thanks to Amazon Prime and some knowledge of small parts that he can buy to keep it limping along. It's gotten to the point now where we can't do it anymore. It's not sustainable. The system needs replaced. And what I'm looking for tonight is a motion to approve us going out and getting some contractors in there to give us some quotes on replacing the unit.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and proceed with the utility director's recommendation.
Move to proceed with getting some estimates on the replacement of the HVAC system at the water plant. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second it with a question.
Okay.
Are we talking about the whole system or just the units themselves?
Just the units that are affected, not all of them, it's one unit in particular.
Okay.
It also is it keeps the salt room dehumidified, so it's
Okay.
one unit in particular.
Yeah.
Okay. I second.
Moved and seconded to proceed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Christian Strong, grease interceptor at the Sugar Shack.
Your Honor, Mr. Strong contacted Crystal Quicksall today, or someone did. Carrie Ketman did, and asked that he be removed from the agenda. I think he initially asked to be on the city council agenda. The request that he gave, Kelly Brookbank asked for that. I think in her conversation with him, she realized he needed to be on this agenda tonight. She sent that to us.
Here comes the attorney.
We added the agenda, or added him to the agenda. And then today, late in the day, we received notice that he would like to be removed from the agenda. So I guess we can table this, but I would like to recommend to the board that if he is so inclined to get on the city council agenda, some guidance would be that he's told to come back to this board so we can talk about that in this board. This is the proper venue to discuss these items. I wish that he were here tonight so he could provide some insight as to what's happening there, or let us know his thoughts on that particular issue. I will say for the record that when we were presented with the changes for the Sugar Shack, both Carl and I sat down with them and asked them what changes would be made at that building. And both Carl and I, and Carl, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we were both told that there wouldn't be any changes to the building. I was concerned about electrical changes because when someone comes into an old building like that and repurposes them for something new, there's always these electrical issues that arise. And I was concerned that we would get in a situation where he wouldn't have enough electricity or enough capacity there to take care of whatever the needs were. So I was really pushing on him to present us with a breaker schedule, kind of a load chart. Despite my asking him this, I was simply told there wouldn't be any changes in the building whatsoever. Fast forward to today, we've had a couple things that have happened at that building that are contrary to the statements that were told to us. One of them, I think, is everyone's aware of the hood over the cooking that's taking place there. And then obviously the grease trap. There's no grease trap in that building whatsoever. One of the more serious things I think personally that took place up there is when we were up trying to get the park ready, Andy Lyons, who was there working with our contractor on a couple issues, called me and said, hey, the painters that are Barrett's, they're getting shocked on the building. So I went over and was talking to the painters, and sure enough, when they were up in the lift trying to paint the building and putting their hands on the face of the building, they were getting electrical shock. And so we made the decision to shut it down, get them down off the building, figure out what was going on. Carl called Gabbard Electric, not Gabbard, it's, I don't know the name of his company, Sean Gabbard. He showed up, his electrician showed up, and they found that when the sign was put on the face of the building, the Sugar Shack sign, that the ground was not taken from inside the building and ran through the sign and out to, terminated out with the rest of the electrical wires. In addition to that, the electrical wiring had shorted out on the sign and was in fact energizing the entire cast iron face of the building. The problem with that is the ability for the breaker to see that load and trip was removed because they didn't run a common in all of that electrical wiring. And in essence, what that means is if somebody would have made good enough contact with the face of the building, if they'd been standing in a puddle of water or something and building face was wet and they touched it, two things would have happened to protect them. It would have either had to burn the number 12 wire in half, or it had to be enough electrical load to trip the main breaker. At that point, we're probably talking about someone being severely injured or killed. And so these things, they're not small things. It's not inconsequential. These things actually matter, and people are killed by these kinds of things happening, unbeknownst to the utilities or utility service board or the building inspector all the time. There was just in Cincinnati last week an electrical city worker who was electrocuted and killed. These things happen, and so I would just ask that this board be diligent in making sure these customers or the people who want to do business with us and interact with the public, that they do those things that we need them to do to keep themselves safe, keep the public safe. I think Carl said it best. He said, everybody loves us till we say no. Second we say no, we're dirtbags. But the only time we say no is if it does not meet these carefully considered rules and regulations and ordinance that this body and city council have approved. And so, again, if this comes before the council, I would hope that you guys would redirect them here. I will say that in the email back and forth with Christian, the statement was made that a city official gave them permission to wire the sign the way they did, and I don't believe that. I don't think that's accurate. And
Okay.
I think that a statement like that needs to be addressed, because to not address it is almost admitting that maybe it's accurate, and it certainly isn't.
No, that's pretty common. I've worked on several houses that have aluminum siding where they nailed into like the wires inside and the whole side of the house, the aluminum siding's live like that.
Yeah.
The biggest problem I got, guys, is how did it get past council? Council owns a group of buildings, and we all agreed to let our administration spend some money on maintenance, but anything that's gonna be done in any of those buildings needs to come before council before it's done.
I agree.
So the one thing I would like you to do, Dale, is on the agenda at the next, if he wants to put a hood system in that, he needs to come before council first. And at that point, after we're done with the questions of apartments above, life safety, hood systems, the proper one, at that point, we can send him to Carl and Olin, but he's gotta know who owns the buildings. Any of our renters can't just do what they want with these buildings. So I would like that addressed. And,
Yes, sir.
And I'm not, look, I ate 2 of the best cheeseburgers I ever had, and then he was shut down. He did it, and I want him to do good. Christian's a hard worker, but we put rules in place for everybody.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to suggest. Obviously, it's difficult, and we're finding it difficult to own as much property as we do, and we didn't ask for it, but we're making the best out of a tough situation. And just playing devil's advocate, whether it's true or not, giving him the benefit of the doubt, because it is our building, and I do agree that these standards need to be followed. We have an opportunity maybe to partner with him as his landlord and find a way to make those changes to not only suit his proposed business changes that would benefit the community. It's a potential new restaurant adjacent to the park, but would also be kind of a showcase for what Olin is discussing and Carl is discussing, and kind of show off, you know, this is what it needs to look like, and this is how you do it, and this is the proper way.
Okay, I have a couple comments. First of all, I'd like to call Mr. Fryman up to the podium. I've done a little investigation about this situation, and I think he has some pertinent information for us. Second thing is, my degree is in safety engineering, and it takes 10 milliamps of electricity to stop someone's heart. 10 milliamps will not trip a breaker. Won't do it. I investigated an accident in Cleveland, Ohio, from Cleveland Public Power, that a gentleman was killed buying a newspaper from a newspaper stand, the little metal stands you have on the street. It was energized. He was standing in a puddle of water, older gentleman, probably my age, and was killed. Bang, just like that. So what Olin described is a very serious situation. We don't know, had the painters, any of the painters had a heart issue, we could have had some real serious problems. The city. So we have to be very vigilant about what we do. Carl, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Fryman.
Do somebody have some questions for me? I thought that's what
Well, I want to ask you, Carl, when you and I had a conversation and the health inspector was there when Mr. Strong opened his ice cream place, what was his comments to you and the health inspector?
It's a lady, and I think it's well known that nobody knew there was hamburgers in there. I mean, I sat in a staff meeting listening to my boss tell me about the best cheeseburger. I had no idea where it came from. That's fine. If I'd have known at the time, I would have probably went. But I've also seen a few things that I think that Dell and myself are going to be able to change in these. I doubt seriously if I will watch another business board up their windows and me not know what's going on behind it. I think that's a major deal. I mean, I think this could have been caught. I let it go on. I'm not going to lie to you. I've seen it done before, and I think it's a surprise element. But I didn't really know we owned that particular building to begin with. But that there would probably be one way to stop a lot of this stuff. As far as the sign goes, I think the people sometimes they come in and they get a historic. There's a lot of things that go into getting that sign, and he may have thought he had all of it, but I never looked at it. I mean,
And typically you would inspect
anything with electrical, I would inspect. I mean, I've always said that.
But you weren't notified about the wiring of the sign or anything?
Well, when I seen the way it was wired, I don't think anybody would have passed it. I mean, not just the wiring that you couldn't see, with the excess wire. I mean, when you've been in this business long enough, you can just about tell when you walk into something how it's ran, if it's a professional job. When there is probably 4 extra feet of wire wrapped around underneath the awning, it was obvious that somebody just got it up there. I mean, those are things you get used to seeing. But there's a few things that we can work. There is a lot of permits on a sign. City official, I don't know who came and looked at it, but I'm sure a city official gave him permission to get a sign, just not operate a sign.
When Mr.
I guess that's the
Strong
difference.
opened up, what was his comment to you and the health inspector?
That there would be no changes and there'd be no cooking. I mean,
No cooking, just ice cream
No.
and whatever malts or whatever.
nope. But things change.
Okay, thanks, Carl.
And I would like to say that, you know, Randy brought up a good point about, you know, communication and being able to pull groups together and get things done in a more efficient manner. You know, we had all those streets tore up there completely tore up for a long period of time, had the sidewalks tore up. There was a lot of opportunity for someone to tell us, hey, I'm thinking about cooking in this building, where we could have assisted with grease traps and not had it be such an expensive endeavor. Because I can tell you now, going back in now with all that work being done around the park, who here wants to dig the streets up and replace the sidewalks? I don't think anybody wants to do that. It'd be horrible if we did. But a lot of those things could simply be avoided just in a simple communication with us. Just tell us what it is you're planning, and we'll tell you how we can help you accomplish it.
I think the only thing that bothered me, and I think my attorney and we fight it daily when we go to court. Property owners are the people that are responsible. When it falls back in Indiana, whoever owns that building, something goes wrong, it's their responsibility. And I feel terrible to think that if that's a city building and something would have happened, that we would, because I didn't go in. I sat there and listened to people talking about cheeseburgers. I had no idea that we had a new kitchen in town. But we know it's our responsibility, it's our building, so we have to maintain. We can't ask somebody else to do it and then we not do it ourselves. That's what I'm after.
We got a 100-year-old building down there, and we got people living above it. So I hope when everybody, and by the way, it's a whole block of 100-year-old buildings, and hoods are the most dangerous thing in a restaurant. If he wants to put a hood system in order for me to vote for it, it's gonna be a Cadillac. It ain't gonna be what he had in there. So, you know, when he comes, he needs to come prepared.
And I might as well add to that. You can ask for what you want. My hands get tied. A UL listed hood. I mean, I went all the way to the State Fire Marshal with this. They will accept that hood. So, I mean, if it's turned down, it's turned down for the requirements of who owns the building.
I was gonna say, but
can't-
as owners of the building, we can make the requirements, can't
We
we?
can make anything. I'm just telling you, I can't turn it down. If he puts one in there, I have to inspect it and pass it.
Tony, and what you just said is my whole point. That we can push for what we need, because I don't know how many people we got sleeping up above them, but I think they're all rented.
They are, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Maybe
you
it's a
know,
good idea if we, as city council, not this board, but we have some inspectors go in there and check this building out to have the electric and stuff checked out, make sure things are all right.
Check all those
I don't know
buildings.
when's the last time it's ever been looked at.
Check them all.
And all the work that's been done on it is, I think it needs to be looked at.
there's ways to do it, but it's not, you don't take the cheapest route on something like this.
Well, and let's remember, I mean, with this,
There has been work done down the basement, the duct work and wiring and stuff, so there's been a lot of work done the last couple of years. And I like to have kind of looked at to make sure it is safe.
yep, I think that's fair. But I think there's a balance to be struck. I mean, with this grease trap ordinance, with anything that it kind of originates originates in Olin's bailiwick, and he's seen the negative effects of FOGs and what that can do, and obviously that is something that merits regulation and creative problem solving. But we also have small business owners who are trying to make it in our city and make our city better, and it's a symbiotic relationship, and we've got to keep that in mind. And I think we do have to give them the benefit of the doubt, because
One lesson though I want you to learn, you just said something, there's a balance to be struck.
yeah.
There's never a balance to be struck on life safety. Never.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
All right.
And I would also say that it's an equality thing, because we have plenty of small businesses out there that have paid to have 1,000-gallon units put in. I provided a list of literally dozens and dozens of businesses in this community that have 1,000-gallon up to 26,000-gallon grease interceptors. So to say to somebody, oh, number one, you didn't ask us about it in the first place, but I guess just put a 50-gallon under the sink. What does that tell the guy that I just made put 1,000-gallon in last week, or the guy I made put 1,500-gallon in last year, or Pizza Hut who's putting a 1,500-gallon in right now? I mean, it's an equity thing. And I know it's not convenient, but again, life safety and rules and ordinances are in place, because people tend to have they have this tendency to try to make exceptions. And when we make exceptions in my world, in the utility world, it causes major problems. Life safety problems, functionality problems, maintenance problems that cause other people problems. It's never a good idea in my world to deviate from ordinances and the way we do things, because it's there for a reason. It's a protective thing, and they're minimums. That's the other things. These are minimums. These are not maximums. These are minimums.
Well, I looked at, this is kind of off subject, kind of on, I looked at Christian's estimate to purchase the grease interceptor and to have it installed. And just the ice cream I bought there this month pays for 1.3% of it. Just the ice cream I bought this month myself.
How much ice cream do you eat?
Well, it's been about $10 a day for the kids. But if I eat it, it's a little more. I figured out per day, and I just sit here and figured it out a minute ago.
Well, there's a balance, and you know, we make the rules, whatever the rules are. As long as they're applied evenly, then prospective businesses will look at Lawrenceburg and they'll decide, can I afford to do business here? So, you know, we keep that in mind.
Any other new business come before this board?
I understand. We have two businesses that have abided by these rules, and they're the very same rules. And I go in and check the little lady across the street and the Captain's Tavern. And every time, I think it's called the Captain's Tavern. Every time somebody in this town gets jealous of somebody, they call the health department, and I have to go to see what they're cooking. They've abided by the rules that we laid down in place for years now. And I don't think it's fair to them to missed out 2 years of a grease frying and stuff like that. That's the rules, and they found it easy to abide by.
Dale, the only last thing I'd like to say is we don't even need to talk about the grease trap until we get the hood straightened out. Because, you know, if he can convince us on the hood, then we need to talk about the grease trap. But I don't want him coming in to council wanting to talk about a grease trap, because I'm kind of hung up on the hood right now.
Yep.
So make sure, you know, take it in the right order here.
Yes, sir.
Any other issues under new business? Old business?
No, Your Honor.
Let's approve the claims or not. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the claim.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Anybody else wants to go home?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Jeez,
All
you guys wanna
opposed?
stay, I guess.
Meeting adjourned.
Oh, and that's yours.
I got the 1.3% of it right there by myself.
I like it. I'm about to get
Which building's that, hon?
Hey, can I stop over?
No, they're gonna fix it.
You doing?
Yeah, they're gonna fix
We
it.
need to sign something else, or did we sign everything?
Leave.
That's it.
But that building's
Just
built in
his
4
claim
different
sheet?
sections, just one section.
Thank you, Suzanne. See you later. Get warm.
Okay.
Yeah.
The,